Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. In this episode, folks, what we're going to talk about is Brad Holmes. But we're going to be talking about Brad Holmes in the perspective, in the light, in the view lens of players. I know that when it comes to certain players over the last couple of years, there has been a bit of a bitterness, if you will. I don't know if I can come up with a better word, but that's the word I will use when it comes to how Brad Holmes has, drafted certain types of players. And it's kind of ironic, it's kind of funny that, when it comes to Brad Holmes, there are certain people out there that will say, oh, well, because of this particular player, that's a reason why Brad Holmes is not the best. Or you know what, this player right here is a reason why we can't fully trust Brad Holmes. Or why Brad Holmes still needs to be questioned. Brad Holmes still needs this. Brad Holmes still needs that. As if what Brad Holmes in the front office with Dan Campbell, Sheila, Chris, and the rest of them, as if they have not proven their worth. As if they have not proven that they should not be questioned as harshly as they have been in certain categories. And I find it funny that since 2023, we have seen how certain analysts, certain podcasters, and definitely a lot of fans have had a big issue with how Brad Holmes has conducted business. But what I find even more ironic, more funny about it, is that for as quick as those types of people will say something negative or will, put some sort of viewpoint as if, oh, you know what, because of what Holmes has done, this is a reason as to why we can't fully trust him. As soon as those people come out and say that, it's typically not very long before they revert right back to where they were before all that happened. It's not very long before people start saying, oh, you know what? There's no reason ever to doubt Brad Holmes. You know what? Brad Holmes is once again proving his worth. And I find it funny that we have literally seen this diamond dance at least a few times over the last couple of years. If you go back to 2023, we saw it with the whole thought process about drafting Jahmyr Gibbs where we drafted him. There were a lot of people that thought we drafted him way too high. That literally lasted for about an hour or two, as far as that viewpoint. And then there were a lot of people that thought, well, you know what, maybe he wasn't drafted too high, but maybe a lot of people didn't think that Jahmyr Gibbs was going to be as good as what they thought he was going to be. That thought process literally died by almost the end of the year, and it certainly definitely had died by the middle of 2024. You then talk about Jack Campbell. I still remember, to this day, I still have the clip saved on my phone of when it was announced that the Lions are drafting Jack Campbell, and you can literally see Braylon Edwards from Woodward Sports, and he literally is just in absolute disbelief. Like, he cannot believe that Brad Holmes just made, in his opinion at the time, an absolutely horrendous, horrible mistake. And if you actually find the clip that I have, which I do have it, you can literally hear in the background somebody cry Malik Willis as if that's who we were going to draft. And it's funny, it's that, in 2023 it was Jahmyr Gibbs and it was Jack Campbell. In 2024, it's been ongoing with Terry and Arnold. But now we get to 2025, the whole thought process was with the Lions trading up so much to go and draft Isaac Tesla. I still remember when we drafted him, there were Lions fans that were screaming bloody murder about how Brad Holmes could trade up so much to draft a wide receiver when in their viewpoint there was such a predominant need at drafting an edge rusher. Like, how could Brad Holmes make such a terrible move? But I remember when we drafted Isaac Tesla, I'm like, you know what? This actually has the potential to be a really sneaky good pick. Because the first thing I noticed, as I've said before, when we drafted Tesla, was the size, was his ability to catch the ball with his hands, never uses his body. I was like, I'm telling you, this kid has the ability to be a really sneaky special player for the Lions. And it's funny how over the last couple of months, we have once again, from the fans, some of them, from a lot of analysts and a lot of other podcasters, we have seen a complete 180 in regards to their viewpoint about Brad Holmes, especially when it comes to the Tesla pick. Now, I will say this. Tesla, like other picks, has continued to bolster the evidence, continued to bolster the viewpoint that Brad Holmes knows what the hell he's doing. But I will say this. Brad Holmes is not impervious. He is not perfect. He is not at all, unable to make mistakes. Because we have seen that happen. We've seen it with the Hendon Hooker pick, which everybody and their brother right now, when we drafted him, and it's kind of funny. It really is funny. I have to put this out there. It's really funny how the dichotomy of the situation between fans has become the way that it has. Because think about this. When Brad Holmes drafted Hendon Hooker, there were so many fans that thought that Hendon Hooker was going to be the next franchise quarterback. They absolutely praised Hendon Hooker. They praised the Hendon Hooker pick by Brad Holmes because they're like, oh, Brad Holmes is making a pick to get a mobile, athletic quarterback. He's going to bring the Lions into the future. This is an awesome pick. They absolutely praised the pick. Now here we are 2-3 years later, and everybody's just like, oh my God, what a horrible pick. What a waste of a pick. And now, the funny part about it, like I said, when we drafted Isaac Tesla over an edge rusher, there were so many people that were like, how could Brad Holmes be so stupid? How could he spend so much draft resources to draft this kid when we needed an edge rusher? That was what everybody was going on about. But now here we are a couple of months later, and everybody's talking about Isaac Tesla as if he's the next Puka Nacua. And I believe that he's going to be even better than Puka Nacua. He's bigger, he's faster, and on top of that, he's already showing more earlier than what Puka Nacua was. Now, whether or not he's going to perform and be able to produce like Nacua did in his first year with the Rams, I don't believe that's probably likely going to happen because, well, when Puka Nacua was out with the Rams, he slid in as the number 2 wide receiver. There's no way that's happening with the Lions because, oh, that's right, we already have Amon-Ra St. Brown, we have Jameson Williams there. At best, Isaac Tesla could overtake Tim Patrick right now, which would mean, okay, he's going to get some decent production, but is Isaac Tesla going to put up 1,000+ yards in his rookie year? No, that's not likely going to happen. But the skill set, the ability is all there. And it brings a much deeper ability of depth. It brings a much deeper ability of having options within the offense that the Rams never had. But what I'm trying to point out here is that you take a look at Brad Holmes' draft record. You take a look at his track record overall. For every 1 or 2 misses that he may have, you can literally count probably double, if not triple, the amount of successes that he has had on the opposite coin face. Because think about this. When it comes to draft picks, the first and only 2 that most people will think about that have been absolute just total flops, failures, busts, whatever, the 2 biggest ones that instantaneously come up are Broderick Martin and Hendon Hooker. Those are the 2 biggest ones. The next ones followed after that would probably be Levi Onwuzurike, and you'd probably be able to throw a couple of others in there. But let's call it for what it is. If the most that you can put out as a reason why Brad Holmes has done so poorly is Broderick Martin, Hendon Hooker, and Levi Onwuzurike, in the stark, vast, dichotomous comparison of, let's think here, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Jamison Williams, Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malcolm Rodriguez, Isaac Tesla already. I mean, dude, the list of the successes that he has had in drafting versus the failures that he has had, it's like a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio. And again, I have said this before. When you talk about most GMs, at best, typically at best, they will have a 1-to-1 ratio. For every one great success they will have, they might have one really great failure. But with Brad Holmes, it's almost like a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio. It's not even close. So when I hear people during draft night, or when I hear people now when they say, oh, you know what, Brad Holmes has really missed the mark and he's really starting to show that he's not all that good because of what's happened with Hendon Hooker, what's happened with Broderick Martin, what's happened with Levi Onwuzurike, and all of these guys either not playing up to standard or, you know what, they're constantly getting injured. We're also starting to hear that about Rakestraw now. It's like, wait a minute here, folks, back up here. Just pump the brakes for half a damn second. You want to focus on the 2 to 4 players that Brad Holmes has drafted that have not panned out well. But let's focus on all of the other players that he has drafted, some of them in later draft pick selections or in the same draft selection picks, that those players that we are talking about that have been failures. Again, it's not even a comparison. It's not even close. Brad Holmes has proven that he is quite literally the king of finding those diamonds in the rough, finding those gems, those hidden, pieces of just absolute gold that nobody thinks about. And then when it actually gets sprung on people during the draft period, the draft selection process, I can tell you this right now. I don't know how many times I've heard analysts be like, I don't know what to make of this pick. I don't know why the Lions would make this selection here. There's other guys that they could have gone for that were better in terms of what they needed. But that's what also plays very well into Brad Holmes' draft strategy. He does not draft just based on areas of need. He drafts who is the best player available for the team that they're talking about, which is the Lions. Drafts the best players available in terms of football IQ, football character, in terms of cultural fit, in terms of their, mentality and how they are going to fit with the rest of the team. Because again, as the saying goes, hard work will beat out talent every single time because there will be a lot of talent that's not willing to work hard. And I know I said that a little bit differently, but the point of the matter is we've seen a lot of talented players that have come into the NFL. Absolutely just dripping with physical talent. But because they're not willing to work hard or because of some other, whatever problem they might have, because they're not mentally into it, they're not physically disciplined, whatever the case might be, they always get outperformed or overlooked by other guys who are willing to bust their ass and apply themselves to a process. That's how they outperform those types of players. And that's why when you take a look at these guys, some of which that might not have been the most, physically, dripping with talent compared to other guys that were coming out during the draft period, they have already overshadowed, they have already surpassed guys that were taken in front of them. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the perfect example of this. There were, 18 receivers that were taken before him, 14, 15 receivers, I don't know what it was. But he has their names, every single one of them, memorized. Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't the most physically gifted specimen of a receiver that came out in the 2021 draft. No one is going to say that. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Almost nobody, save maybe 1 or 2 guys that has come out of that draft, has outperformed Amon-Ra St. Brown because nobody outworks him. Nobody comes even close to outworking him. His dedication to the craft that he is building, the dedication to the team, the dedication to the process that the Lions have instilled in him, that has amplified his talent and has amplified his ability to perform way more than just about anybody else. And you're seeing that with guys like Tesla now. They are so committed to getting better, even if it doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting all the recognition, but they're committed to getting themselves better because they realize that if they get better, they make the team better. And if the team gets better, it reflects back on them. That's the whole process. That's why it's called in football. Football is not a I sport. It's a team sport. And when you have every single player that adheres to that thought process, whether it's Tesla, whether it's St. Brown, whether it's Hutch, whether it's Sewell, whether it's Campbell, whether it's Gibbs, whether it's Jameis, whoever you want to put out there, regardless of who you talk about, they have all identified that, hey, it's not about me getting what I want. It's not about me being put up on a pedestal. The I is secondary always to the team aspect. And that is why Brad Holmes has been able to be so successful, because he gets the right guys. Not necessarily because they're the most physically or most talented, specimens that are available in the draft, but they're the right guys because their mentality, as far as their attitude, as far as their dedication, is going to propel them further than almost anybody else. Because think about it. Like I just said, with all those guys that I rattled off that are the quote-unquote failures of Brad Holmes, Broderick Martin was a third-round draft pick. Hendon Hooker was a third-round draft pick. But think about this. Kirby Joseph was a third-round draft pick. Now he's the best safety in the NFL. Isaac Tesla, a third-round draft pick. Already looking like he's going to be the next Puka Nacua of the NFL. You take a look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, a fourth-round draft pick. One of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Every time you want to talk about players that Brad Holmes has drafted that have not worked out, again, you have to take a look at the literal mountain of evidence that shows how Brad Holmes has been more than amply successful than just about any other GM when it comes to finding those hidden gems, those diamonds in the rough that people don't look for. Oh yeah, sure, Brad Holmes has all those first and second round draft picks that have been absolutely just, stellar. But the true genius, the true measuring stick of what Brad Holmes has done is finding those guys in the later rounds of the draft or even the UDFAs. Because everybody wants to talk about Robert Meeks, a UDFA that's absolutely come in and looks like he might be able to make the roster. Guys like Keith Cooper, guys like Ahmed Hazanin. These are guys that nobody really thought a whole hell of a lot about, but it's like, dude, these are guys that really have the ability to be something good for the Lions or something really, really damn special. And when you take a look at what's been happening in the preseason with those guys that we're talking about, like Tesla and like Meeks, you're seeing that process that the Lions have applied themselves to of believing in we're going to go for the best player, the best, in essence, human being that is also a football player, someone that applies themselves not only to the craft, but also to understanding football and also to the culture of hard work and grit that we have, that outshines and outperforms 95 to 99% of all other players in the NFL. And when you have a full team of players like that, there's almost nobody that can stand in your way. That's why when you're able to, you look at how the Lions have been performing in the preseason, even though, you know what, they don't have Aaron Glenn, they don't have Ben Johnson, it doesn't freaking matter. Because it's not about the coaches that get put in or get taken out. Like Dan Campbell said, if I've done my job right, when I leave, it'll still continue to go on. Because it's not about me being here. It's about the organization. It's about the team adopting the philosophy and the mindset that we have instilled here. That is what is going to outlive and outlast any player or any coach that's there, is adhering to a set of principles and philosophies that you build into a team's culture. And that's what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done. So then when their time is done, hopefully for not another 20 years or so, we don't have to worry about it. That's why I'm saying how Brad Holmes and how Dan Campbell and the rest of those guys in the front office and gals have done their job, and you see the results in terms of the players that we've drafted and how they're performing or have been performing for years, it shows why the Lions are one of the best teams in the NFL and one of the best organizations now in the NFL. That's the whole point of this episode. That's why I look at how Tesla's performing, and it doesn't surprise me. It's hell of encouraging to me because it's like, hey, everybody thought he might take longer to get up to speed, but he's absolutely performing right now. And it's like, dude, I can't wait till the regular season. Not just to watch Lions football regular season in general, but just to watch players like Tesla, watch players like Tyreek Williams, watch players like Tate Ratledge, players that, where they were drafted, they didn't make sense to analysts because it's like, why are they not drafting the player that we think is a better fit for them based upon the need? But based upon what the Lions believe is the best need or the best fit for the team, that's who they went with. And they're already showing that they're absolutely the right guys for us. And that's why this works the way it works. But anyway, folks, I've said my piece on this. Hopefully you all will agree. If you don't, I just ask you please be respectful. So having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do this. If you like the content, to please subscribe if you've not done so already. But if you subscribed in the past, and if you just subscribed as you were inclined to, I also hope that you will also please make sure to hit that bell notification icon so that way you never miss any more content I push out. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you all got something in life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.